Thank you, Dr. Viva, and thank you, Dr. Saji. I would just like to share my presentation. I can.
Yeah, please do so. Please do.
First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Saji for giving me this opportunity. And I would also like to thank Dr. Imran, who introduced me to this, and Dr. Viva, and my mentor in homeopathy, Dr. Rakesh Gupta. First of all, the topic today is slightly different, but definitely very important. And this is beyond the countries. I mean, India is suffering a lot from tobacco epidemic. Similarly, other countries have their own issues related to tobacco because tobacco lobby internationally is very strong. To begin with, I am representing India Cancer Society, which is a very renowned and a big name in India for cancer prevention, detection, rehabilitation, and cancer treatment care, helping the patients for cancer treatment financially also. So basically, the major work is in cancer prevention and early detection. So to begin with today's session, why is it important? There is this GATT survey, Global Adult Tobacco Survey, which has been done by WHO in collaboration with different countries, governments. India is also conducting this survey with a duration of some years. There are some 22 countries across the globe which are doing this Global Adult Tobacco Survey. This is a pretty authentic survey because World Health Organization and different country governments are directly involved into this. So the results, currently I am presenting data of India. The data, first when this survey was done in 2007-8 in India, where the results were very shocking, which were like 48% of Indian males and 20% of females in India consume some or the other kind of tobacco product. So if you consider a population of India and the adult population, and if 50%, it's 48 is almost 50%. So if 50% of Indian adult male are consuming some or the other kind of tobacco product, it is something which is very alarming, which is very shocking. The same survey was repeated in 2016-17, and with the different efforts of government and other bodies and other non-government organizations working aggressively for tobacco awareness and tobacco de-addiction. The rate has reduced to some 42%, but still it's a very huge number because 40% of a huge country like India, this is a huge number. So basically, the need for this is very much in India as well as other countries, because this is the cause for many other illnesses. We'll talk about the different diseases and all in detail. But what point I'm trying to make is there is an urgent need for tobacco de-addiction. See, tobacco de-addiction, definitely it's not related to any pathy. But definitely homeopathy can be a big part in the treatment part of it. But we can do that only when we understand the basics of tobacco de-addiction. So today I'm going to begin my session with understanding the basics of tobacco de-addiction. So to begin with, first we will cover what are the different tobacco products, just to get an overview of it. Then we'll talk about how it affects us health, financial and socially. And then we'll talk about what are the exactly what is so uniqueness about the tobacco de-addiction. And then we'll talk about a treatment part, which WHO has some set protocols. And then we can also talk about the homeopathic management of this particular addiction. So to begin with, as I said, the tobacco products, why understanding tobacco product is important? Because most of the time it happens because tobacco lobby and tobacco industry is so vast and it is so diversified. So there are n number of tobacco products. So we may or may not be aware of all the tobacco products. So it might happen that because of our ignorance and because of our we are not aware of certain products, we might miss a patient. Because once we ask the patient about tobacco, we may ask about 2-3 products, and maybe the person is having a 5th or a 10th product, which we are not aware about. So it's good that we should be aware of at least the basic products which are common in our practice area or our country or our vicinity where we are practicing. Another thing, tobacco de-addiction is also important. To take care in any patient who comes to you for any treatment. The diagnosis may be different, but as mentioned by Hahnemann in our aphorism, where obstacles to cure is very important. So tobacco is something which is an obstacle to cure. So no matter what best simillimum you select for the particular case after taking the detailed case history, but if you're not removing the obstacles, definitely your treatment is going to get hampered. So consider tobacco de-addiction as an obstacle to cure and understand the basics of tobacco de-addiction first. So as I was talking about the tobacco products, I won't go into the details of it, but I'll just briefly explain to you what are the common products in India, and some are also common internationally also. Before starting about the products, I would like to mention some basic misconceptions about tobacco is that, first of all, every tobacco product is harmful, no matter which product it is. So wherever there is tobacco, in any form, it is going to be harmful. Secondly, no matter what quantity you are consuming it, it is going to be harmful. And third is, no matter what duration you are consuming it, it is still going to be harmful. So these three things are the bottom line. No matter which tobacco product it is, no matter what quantity the patient is consuming it, and no matter what duration, like he has been consuming it since 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, that doesn't matter. Even then, he can land up into problems, and it is important for every person to quit, no matter if he's having it only for 1 year or 2 years. Also, it is important for him to quit. So these three things you should always remember. Talking about the tobacco products, as I said, the tobacco products are divided into two major categories: smoking and smokeless. Smoking is very simple. When we have to burn it and the smoke arises, so they are called as smoking product. Among the smoking tobacco products, cigarettes are very common across the globe. Cigarettes come in different sizes and shapes and different brands and different categories, like slim cigarettes or gold flake light or low tar cigarettes or ladies cigarette or slim cigarettes. I mean, this tobacco companies spend enough amount of money in marketing this so that they can target their audience and they can, get more and more people into it. But as I said in the beginning, no matter which tobacco product, it is going to be harmful. So irrespective of which cigarette it is, which brand it is, or which form it is, whether it is a slim or not slim, whether it is low tar or not low tar, it is definitely going to be harmful. Another very common product in India is the BDs. Now, BDs and cigarettes are slightly different because BDs don't have filters, which cigarettes have filters. So again, there is a misconception that because cigarettes have filters, they are less dangerous. But again, I'm telling you, there's nothing like that. Both are equally dangerous. Yes, of course, the cost of cigarette is much higher than the cost of BDs. That is why the BDs are more cheaper and more easily available. So the consumption of BDs is much more in India. Because cigarettes come under the tax preview, and every year the government increases the taxation, so that the cigarettes cost goes up every year, and it's very costly. But BDs as such are very cheap, and that is why the consumption of BDs is much more. But again, as I'm saying, both are equally dangerous. The third is hookah. Now, this hookah is again a very product which has been consumed across the globe in different. It is famous in different areas also. And it is not considered as that dangerous. But again, this is a big misconception that hookahs are safe. Hookahs are very dangerous, and in fact, they are more dangerous than cigarettes. First of all, try to understand that the hookah sessions last for more period of time, and it's not like a cigarette that you take a cigarette for 5 minutes or 2 minutes and you finish it. But hookah sessions are normally for a longer duration, so exposure is more. Secondly, no matter what flavored hookah it is, these hookahs are available in different flavors, and people claim that because these are flavored hookahs, they are not tobacco, they are not dangerous. But try to understand again, no hookah is without tobacco. No matter what flavor it is, the flavor content, the box will, whatever flavor it is, it will be written over there, nicotine content so and so. So no matter what content or how much is nicotine into it, definitely it is still going to be harmful. And thirdly, the carbon monoxide gas itself, which is released, is definitely a poisonous gas, and the consumption is definitely harmful. So, as I said in the beginning, no tobacco product is safe. Similarly, hookahs are dangerous, and they are more dangerous. But a lot of people have misconception regarding this, that they feel hookahs are safe, and it has been socially accepted, and a lot of youngsters, specifically younger generation or younger crowd or younger children are get into this habit. And eventually, then they graduate to other tobacco products from this hookah. So this hookah is like an entry point for many youngsters. So we have to be very careful, and we should also be explaining the patient. If you find a patient with hookah consumption, you should still explain them and how dangerous it is. One more important point I'm trying to will explain you here, that there is something called as interstitial lung disease. Now, this interstitial lung disease is basically a disease of the lungs. Our lungs are elastic organ, and because of this elasticity, they expand when we inhale and air into the lungs. That is because of this elasticity. But what happens is interstitial lung disease or ILD. In ILD, basically your lung elasticity is lost. They get fibrosed. So the person has a lot of difficulties, and once this gets fibrosed, there is no treatment available. Anywhere till date, there is no treatment available for interstitial lung disease because it's a structural change that the lungs get fibrosed. The main reasons for interstitial lung disease are cigarette smoking, BD smoking, and hookah smoking. I have personally seen patients coming to chest physicians for after consumption of hookahs landing up into interstitial lung disease. There are other reasons for interstitial lung disease like environment, pollution, and industrial waste. But again, cigarette, BD, and hookah smoking remain the top cause for interstitial lung disease. So you have to be very careful, and you should explain the person who is into hookah that it is equally dangerous like cigarettes and other tobacco products. Apart from that, there are other local tobacco products available like cheroots and cigars. You must have seen in English movie. The cigars are again tobacco rolled into a tobacco leaf itself, and they are smoked. So basically, they are a tobacco product, and definitely they are harmful. Apart from this, there is a new product which is coming, which you all should be aware of, which is called as e-cigarettes. Now, these e-cigarettes are nothing but drug dispensing devices. They are wrongly called as e-cigarettes because they are nothing e-cigarette or e into it. There is nothing, what we can say, online into it. It's not a e of anything. It is just a drug dispensing device. It comes in different shapes and sizes. It has tobacco and nicotine in liquid form. And because of the batteries into it, they also emit smoke. So they need not be light by fire, but because there are small batteries into it and they have combustion, and they actually can see the smoke. They have different names like e-cigarette, Juuls, vapes. So all these different forms and size and shapes are available. Initially, they were introduced as harm reduction technique, but as I said, they are equally dangerous because they have tobacco in liquid form, and World Health Organization has yet not approved any of the e-cigarettes. And there are a lot of research papers now coming up showing how it is affecting your health and how consumption of e-cigarettes is damaging your body. Initially, a lot of tobacco lobby also controls this e-cigarettes, and tobacco companies have their own e-cigarettes also. Similar to the hookahs, e-cigarettes are an entry point into getting into this kind of addictions. Currently in USA, they are facing a big challenge because a lot of youngsters are into this consumption of vapes and Juuls. And eventually they land up into other products like they graduate to cigarettes and other high nicotine products. But as I said, a lot of research studies are showing now how e-cigarettes are dangerous to the body. And other side is the addiction. Once you're getting, it is very difficult to get out of this. And youngsters are getting, again, falling prey to it. So you should also be aware of this upcoming different tobacco products, because as I said, if you're not aware of this tobacco product, you will lose the patient. Apart from this, as I said, the other part is the smokeless tobacco products. Smokeless tobacco products, again, they are common across the world. In different countries have their own different tobacco products. India has its own product, and other countries have their own product. But these smokeless tobacco products are basically nothing but, again, tobacco, which are again flavored and mixed with different, and they undergo processing, and a lot of other chemicals are added into it, and they have been consumed and they're kept in the mouth. So unfortunately, in India, we have maximum number of these smokeless tobacco products, and that is the reason India today is world number one in oral cancers, because 90% of all cancers, all oral cancers specifically, are tobacco related. 40% of all other cancers are tobacco related. If you see oral cancers, 90% of oral cancers are tobacco related. So you have to be very careful, because smokeless tobacco products, though people feel they are not dangerous like smoking, but definitely the rate of cancers is increasing in India, and the smokeless, because of the high consumption of smokeless tobacco products, the cancer rate is also high. The oral cancer rate is also high in India. Again, I'm aware tobacco is not the only cause of cancers. Definitely there are other reasons of cancers, but tobacco is one of the most preventable cause of cancers. These are the different tobacco products names in India, like Khaini and Zarda and chewing tobacco, which is added into silk, lime, and consumed. There's something called as gutka, mawa, pan. Pan is like a bitter leaf, the tobacco and other ingredients added, and it's been consumed. There are different local products like masheri. There are certain sophisticated toothpaste by the brand name of Ipco and Dentobac in India. I'm not aware of Adi toothpaste prevalent in other countries, but in India there are two specific toothpaste, sophisticated toothpaste, like we have toothpaste when we have brush our teeth in the morning. There are other toothpaste by the brand name of Ipco and Dentobac, which are tobacco toothpaste, and people do get addicted to it, and they apply this toothpaste to their gums because of this addiction. Apart from these products which are to be kept in your mouth, there are other products like fine powder of tobacco, which are known as snuff, or which are inhaled by the nose. These snuffs are also common in other countries also, and this another type of tobacco product which is taken through the nose. They have different local names like Naswar or Chinkni or Tapkir in India. But again, this is a fine tobacco powder which is taken through the nose. So you can understand how much diversified are these tobacco products, and how many different ways of consumption are there of these tobacco products. And as I said in the beginning, no matter what tobacco product it is going to cause problems, no matter how much quantity you are consuming it, or no matter how much duration you are consuming it, it is still going to cause problems. So why is that it is going to cause problems? Because the WHO protocol says that when a person is smoking a single cigarette, he is exposed to almost 4,000 to 7,000 chemicals. Yes, you heard it right. It is almost 4,000 to 7,000 chemicals. Now, out of this 4,000 to 7,000 chemicals, 200 are poisonous, 60 to 65 are proven carcinogenic. Which have capacity to produce cancers. Now, what are these chemicals? As you can see in this slide, there is ammonia, which is there in your detergents, what you use to wash your clothes. There is cadmium, which is there in your batteries. There is acetone, which is there in your paints. There is arsenic poison. There is another nicotine, which is used in insecticides. So try to understand specifically this slide is important while you are explaining to your patients. Today, whatever presentation I'm making, in the point of view, this is that what appeals the patient or what makes an impact to the patients. So you might feel that certain things are very basic, but these basic things are very important to be conveyed and explained to the patient so that he also understand it, because we have to take him talk what he understands, the language in which he understands. So if you tell him that tobacco is poisonous and it has a lot of carcinogenic chemicals, he might not understand it. But once you show him what are these carcinogenic chemicals and you can relate it to his day-to-day whatever products he uses, then he can relate to it, and then he can understand how dangerous it is. Because no one is going to eat your detergent powder or drink your paint or have these things, because these are poisonous things. But a person who is consuming tobacco in any form, basically they are consuming this different chemicals in their body. What happens is when a tobacco comes from the farm, the tobacco farm itself is the tobacco which comes from the farm itself has a lot of poisonous chemicals into it. So basically, it is not an edible plant. But over a period of time, when these companies make these different products, they add more chemicals into it to make different preservatives and different to make it more, what you can say, more addictive and more pleasurable. A lot of other chemicals are added into it. So the current research says that a single cigarette, you are exposed to more than 4,000 to 7,000 chemicals. Out of which 200 are poisonous and 60 to 65 are proven carcinogenic. And these are the different chemicals which you use in a day-to-day practice, which you consume when a person is smoking or consuming any kind of tobacco product. I won't go into details of the effects of this, because we all are aware about it, because smoking has different short-term and long-term effect. It affects every system of your body and different diseases. So as you can see, even in the smokeless, there are 3,000 chemicals, out of which 28 are carcinogenic. So similarly, whatever, as I said, no matter what tobacco product it is going to be definitely dangerous, because 65 carcinogenic chemicals or 28 carcinogenic chemicals, it is still going to be dangerous. As you see, from head to toe, each and every body part is affected because of tobacco consumption. There are different diseases which occur because of tobacco consumption. The majority of cardiovascular diseases are because of tobacco, because tobacco causes constriction of your blood vessels, and that leads to peripheral blood supply reduces, and that leads to gangrenes. And if the blood supply to heart is reduced, you get heart attack. If you get your blood supply to brain is reduced, you get strokes and paralysis. So there are a lot of vascular diseases and other respiratory diseases, all COPDs and other diseases which are caused because of tobacco consumption. Each and every body part is affected because of it. 40% of every 100 cancer cases, as I said, are tobacco related. Another 40% of tuberculosis. That is, tuberculosis and tobacco again have a great relation. Tuberculosis is basically a disease caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which is a bacteria, and it is very common in developing countries, in Asian countries, and even in India. So, how tobacco and tuberculosis are related? See, what happens is tobacco has an inherent capacity to kill your appetite. As you can see, tobacco has an inherent capacity to kill your appetite. If you consume tobacco, you won't feel hungry because pseudo-glucose is released in your body and you won't feel hungry. And if you won't feel hungry, you won't eat anything. If you don't eat anything, definitely your immune system will get affected and your immunity will drop down. So that is how you will be exposed to a lot of infectious diseases. As you can see in current scenario, COVID-19, but definitely tuberculosis also. Today, when you talk about COVID-19, the most important thing what everyone is talking about is you maintain a high immunity. But once you are consuming tobacco, your immunity is affected. That is the reason tuberculosis also is closely related to tobacco consumption, and tobacco consumption can land up into a lot of infectious diseases like tuberculosis, and in the current scenario, also COVID-19. Smokeless tobacco also has a lot of, this was for smoking, but similarly smokeless also, because it has a lot of chemicals, it also definitely affects your body in different ways, and your oral this system is also affected, your gum diseases, your tooth and bone loss. There is another important something finding over here that within 3 years of consumption of smokeless tobacco products, more than 50% of people develop certain precancerous lesions. Now, what are these precancerous lesions? There are red spots in the mouth, or white spots, or submucous fibrosis like erythroplakia, leukoplakia, submucous fibrosis, or unhealing ulcers. Now, these conditions are caused because of the consumption of smokeless tobacco. And if a person, you understand in the history that if the person has consumed this product for more than 3 years, you should look for this signs in the mouth, like red spots, white spots, submucous fibrosis like erythroplakia, leukoplakia, submucous fibrosis, and any unhealing ulcers in the mouth. Because research says that if the person has consumed more tobacco product for more than 3 years, more than 50% of this population starts showing this precancerous condition. So that precancerous lesion itself is a great motivation or great fear factor to tell the patient that, see, if you're not stopping it, definitely it's not just a fear factor. There is a fact that if they don't stop it, it will definitely turn into cancer. There are high chances that it will turn sooner or later into cancers. So this precancerous conditions detection is very important for a person who is consumed tobacco, especially who has consumed for more than 3 years. So apart from health effects, it also has economic and social effects. Like I said, these are the short-term, long-term health effects. I'm not going into much details about the health effects, but there are other economic effects and social effects also. Like economic, if you see, the cigarette cost is itself very high. So you can just tell the person, you can sit and understand if he's how much he's spending. You should make him realize. You can actually calculate and show him if you're consuming 10 cigarettes, what is the cost you are daily losing, how much it is monthly, and how much is it yearly. But once you make a calculation, it will make the person think. Secondly, the social loss is like you can tell him how genetic research studies today show that the kids of the parents who are smoking are very high chances, because genetically also the genes are affected of the, if the parents are into the smoking habit, and they have high chances of getting into smoking, and they have high chances of getting into other problems like impotency and infertility, miscarriages for women. So there are other things you can explain to him, how socially also your life will get affected. Apart from this, what I have realized in my personal practice is that only the fear factor won't help. So you should also talk about the positive sides, because what the layperson or the patient thinks that these facts are right, but if I'm consuming tobacco product for more than 3 years, 5 years, he will tell you that I have already consumed so many chemicals. Now, what is the point of quitting? Because I've already damaged my body. So that time you should, this thing is very important to explain him. What are the benefits of quitting? I normally tell the person in the language which he understands, that I tell him that if you meet with an accident and you get an injury, that injury doesn't last for years together. Because there is a repair process going on in the body. Similarly, when a person quits tobacco, there is same repair process going on in the body, and there are proper research studies. You can tell him, talk to him, what are the good changes happening in the body, showing him this research study, like within from 20 minutes of quitting smoking to 15 years of quitting smoking, what are the good changes that are happening in the body? Like within 20 minutes, your pulse rate and blood pressure drops to normal. Within 12 hours, your carbon monoxide level drops to normal. Within 2 to 12 weeks, your circulation improves and your lung function test starts improving. Within 5 to 10 years, the risk to heart attack and stroke drops to 50%. Within 15 years, you are as good as a non-smoker. Means a person who has never smoked and with a person who has quit for before 15 years come on the same level for any cardiovascular disease risk. So this is something very important to tell the patient, because this is something which is going to motivate them. Unfortunately, all the awareness campaigns which are running, they focus more on cancers and focus more on negative aspects of smoking, how it is affecting them. But you should tell them what are the benefits of quitting, because this is something positive and this will give them hope that if I quit, I'll get these benefits, and the earlier I quit, the earlier I can get all these benefits. So this again is a very important slide, and you should always explain your patients about the benefits of quitting. Economic benefit quitting, as I said earlier, whatever money you are losing, you can retain that. There may be people who may say that the tobacco product which they buy is not that as costly as a cigarette, because cigarettes are very costly, but other local tobacco products are very cheap. But you can tell them that the disease what you're buying is very costly. I mean, today the cancers treatments are, I mean, even the many people cannot afford it. It's very difficult for families to get this treatment done, because the treatment is not a single day treatment and there are a lot of complications into it. So the disease which you're buying is very, what you can say, costly. So it's not only about a tobacco product, it is also about the other surrounding impact of tobacco. As I said, social benefits, again, different ways the family is benefited, the kids won't follow you, because normally what kids do is they follow their parents, or they see their siblings and they see their seniors and they do the same thing. So definitely you don't want your child, or you don't want your generation, the coming generation, to get into this habit. So if you are doing it, there are high chances that they will get into it. So you can tell them about what are the social benefits of quitting also. This was just about talking to you about the impact and the different diseases about tobacco. So we can come to the tobacco addiction now. So how does tobacco addiction start? See, every addiction has its own different way to start with. But before I go into specific of tobacco addiction, I would like to tell you some general things about addiction in general. This is not only about tobacco, but addiction in general. There's one senior psychiatrist in India, in Mumbai, who has done this, Dr. Anand Nadkarni. He has a huge experience and work in addiction. So what he says that why do people get into addiction? There are 4 main reasons for it. The first reason is the chemicals present in this particular addictive substances. For example, if you see tobacco, there is this chemical called as nicotine. Notice nicotine itself is addictive in nature. In fact, it is one of the most addictive substances found in the world. Similarly, there is something in alcohol. There is there is something other chemical formulations in other drugs and other addictive substances. So the characteristic of these chemicals is that they are addictive in nature. Like gold has some characteristics, silver has some characteristics. Similarly, this addictive, whatever tobacco or other addictive substances we consume, they have certain chemicals which have the, by characteristic, they're addictive. Means they go into the brain and they create receptor level changes, and the brain starts demanding for more of this chemical. So they have the capacity to produce these receptor level changes in the brain. They have the characteristic that they are addictive in nature. So this is the first reason, that the characteristic of the chemicals. Second thing is the person's personality. The person's personality plays a major role in, again, in tobacco, whatever, I mean, not only tobacco, in any general addiction. You can see people who have strong personalities, they, in spite of everything, they can stay away from addictive substances. I have personally a lot of examples I can share with you. I have done a lot of awareness sessions and de-addiction programs with especially the policemen in India, and this particular group is a very stressful job, and very what you can say, a lot of time is involved into it. So people feel that most of them would be into tobacco or any other addictions. But I've personally met a lot of police people who are totally not into any kind of addictions. Why this happens is because of their strong personality. So strong personality again is very important. Third is the friend and family support. A friend and family support is very important for addiction. There is a famous case study about the Vietnam War. This Vietnam War, US soldiers were deployed, and this was more of a Cold War. And the US soldiers, when they were there, it was for a longer duration, but the soldiers were provided with all the drugs and everything, and they were consuming it. But once the war got over and the soldiers came back to the families, 99% of them were off all the drugs. So if you see that the characteristic of the chemicals is not the only reason. If that was the reason, these soldiers should have continued it because they already hooked to it. But once they're back to their families, they had completely quit it. So friend and family support again plays a very important role. And the fourth thing is the stressful conditions. It is seen that people who go through a lot of stressful conditions, their chances of theirs to getting into this addiction is very high. You should try to remember that once you're taking the history also, you should understand if the person, what exactly he is going through and what one of these conditions is it hampering him. So this is basic for any kind of addiction. It is not only for tobacco. This is general about addiction. So how does tobacco addiction begin? So tobacco addiction begin not that everyone starts smoking 20 cigarettes. It starts with the first try, then people experiment about it. Then basically some of them feel good about it. Some of them doesn't, some people don't like about it. But as I said, these chemicals are so addictive that if 10 people are smoking cigarette for the first time, there are high chances that 9 out of them might get hooked to it or may get into this addiction. That high is the addiction rate because the chemical, the nicotine itself is so addictive. So over a period of time, they become regular tobacco users. Some of them may try to quit with the cessation, go for tobacco cessation, but some of them may not go, and some of them may not be able to do that thing also, and they will continue and become regular smokers. So this is a basic journey of patient can come to you at any level, but this is basic journey of any tobacco consumer. So what is so specific about tobacco addiction? We need to understand because once we need to treat the person, we should first understand what is the specific any things about tobacco addiction. So tobacco addiction, yes, definitely myths is one part, but basically there are three main things: physical, psychological, and behavioral addiction. So tobacco addiction is basically divided into three main addictions, that is physical, psychological, and behavioral. I will explain each in detail. It is very simple, but it is very important. So what do you mean by physical addiction? The word physical itself suggests that there are certain physical level changes in your brain. So as I said, this nicotine, when it enters your body, when you're consuming, when you're smoking, you're exposed to 4,000 to 7,000 chemicals, out of which 200 are poisonous, 60 to 65 carcinogenic, but the main culprit is nicotine. So when you smoke, when nicotine enters your body, nicotine goes to your brain and it creates receptor level changes in your brain, and the brain demands for more and more nicotine. What happens when this nicotine reaches the brain? Dopamine is released, and this dopamine gives you the feel good factor. So most of the drugs, basically, when you consume, they release these hormones which are endorphins, and this give you the feel good factor. So this happens with tobacco or smoking. So because this is a physical level changes in the receptors in your brain, that is why it is called as physical addiction. So how do you differentiate? This is about smoking and smokeless. You can see that when you smoke, nicotine reaches your brain within like 10 to 12 seconds because it is directly gaseous exchange from your lungs and it enters the blood and then it goes to the brain. While if you're consuming a smokeless tobacco product, first it will from the mouth will go to the blood and then it will go to the brain. So the cycle is more bigger in a smokeless tobacco product. That is the reason when a person is consuming a smokeless tobacco, the whatever kick or whatever this he gets because of that, it will take little longer time. Apart from a person who smokes tobacco. So these are the receptor level changes in a current smoker and a person who has ex-smoker who has quit smoking. The receptors have disappeared. So basically, physical addiction is nothing but the nicotine hunger. The brain will demand for nicotine, and if the brain doesn't get that nicotine, the brain will show some withdrawal symptoms, and because it wants that nicotine. So what are these withdrawal symptoms? Basically, the nicotine hunger causes this withdrawal symptoms. If the brain doesn't get this nicotine dose, which is habituated to, it will show certain withdrawal symptoms. Fortunately, or the best part of tobacco addiction is most of these symptoms, I mean, almost all of these symptoms are psychological. That is the biggest difference between tobacco and other addictions, and that is the reason tobacco addiction is very easy to treat at OPD basis, because patient is not going to die, is not going to go into psychosis. Patient will not require any kind of admission, hospitalization, or any hospital care. He can be treated at daycare basis. I have seen so many patients, none of them have got into any serious conditions. So these are the research, proper withdrawals by research, and how much duration they last. So if you see increased irritability, depressed mood, increased anxiety, all this symptoms are psychological, and that is the reason homeopathy plays a very important role. And in fact, no other pathy has this kind of what you can say treatment which is based on this particular, who can take care of this particular withdrawal symptoms. So again, this slide is very important. You need to be aware what are the different common withdrawal symptoms, and that is the reason again follow-up becomes important in any when you are treating a tobacco addiction. So this was about physical addiction. It is a physical level changes in the brain, and your brain demands for nicotine. Second is a psychological addiction. So what do you mean by psychological? The word psychological itself says that there is some strong psychological association the person has developed with this particular tobacco products. For example, if you see people in tension or stress, they feel they need to smoke because there is no correlation, because smoking is not going to help them in any way, not going to solve their problem or reduce their tension. But because of whatever feeling or strong psychological association which they may have developed by talking or whatever stereotype that this particular profession we need to smoke, or creativity we need to force, or stress or tension we need to smoke, a lot of exposure to media or a lot of movies or cinemas, Bollywood movies and all movies have been showing it. So people feel that it reduces stress. So there is no correlation because, as I said, tobacco, nicotine, when it reaches the brain, dopamine is released, but over a period of time, this nicotine level starts dropping and it goes below the baseline. It doesn't become normal. So when it goes below the baseline, the patient starts showing these withdrawals and they demand for another nicotine dose. This cycle continues and people keep on demanding for more and more nicotine. So this taking a cigarette or tobacco product for tension is a great psychological association more than a what you can say what physical addiction, because unless and until we break this or counsel the patient about this, he's not going to quit. Another thing is constipation. A lot of people feel that to have smooth bowel movements, tobacco consumption helps. But again, this is, you need to explain it very clearly to the patient. So again, counseling is very important. That a person, if he says that he is smoking only because he wants to have smooth bowel movements, he will continue it all throughout the day. That means morning was just an excuse. Secondly, he must have started consuming it at the age of whatever 15, 20. But that means first 15 years he was having with smooth bowel movements without tobacco. Third is there is something called a gastrocolic reflex. If in the morning, instead of tobacco, if he has some other stimulant like hot water, hot tea, even then he's going to have the same peristaltic movements and smooth bowel movements. Fourth thing, he need to have fibrous food in the diet so that stool formation it helps in stool formation and he can have smooth bowel movements. And fourth, no doctor is going to prescribe like have 3 cigarettes or 3 whatever tobacco product for constipation. So you should explain the person this is not a medicine and this is not to be taken in the medicine form. But this again we can do only when we counsel the patient and we break this psychological association. All the tobacco products are not just a physical addiction; they have strong psychological association which the patient has with this tobacco products. And third is behavioral addiction. Now, behavioral addiction is that it becomes over a period of time, it becomes a part of the routine. They can be the types like time, place, person, and thing. The person may not be consuming or tobacco, but over a specific time, like in the evening only, he can consume tobacco product. Yeah, like place, only when I go to this place, I smoke or I have tobacco product. Person is like only when I'm with my these friends, I smoke. And thing is like with alcohol, they need to smoke, or with any other tea, they need to smoke. So these are certain again, what habituated people who get into this habit. Now try to understand the person who comes to you. Most of the time, he may be having all these three kind of addictions, or he may also have only behavioral addiction also. So again, your counseling strategy, your treatment strategy will change. So you need to understand first what the person who has come to you, what type of addiction he is into. So myths, I'm not going to detail because these myths are there and you need to clarify it. Like smokeless form of tobacco are less dangerous now. I have already covered it. So I'm not going to detail. Just try to understand every tobacco product is dangerous. This is something very important, interesting slide, which talks about that most of the tobacco users who manage to quit make 3 to 11 attempts before they actually succeed. See, to be very frank, tobacco cessation is 80% of counseling. Counseling in the sense talking to the person, understanding why he's doing it, what are the problem he's facing, and definitely supporting it with our homeric treatment. Most of the time, it can be placebo also. It is placebo most of the times, but again, try to understand. In spite of your best attempts, the person may not quit in the first attempt itself. So when the person is practicing tobacco de-addiction, see, most of you are into general practice, and you definitely you would also get patients who are into this habit. But when you are trying to counsel the patient for tobacco addiction, there are high chances, very high chances that a person may not quit in his first attempt. So this something very important for you to understand it. This is what research sees that a person might take 3 to 11 attempts. So if the person is not quitting in his your first follow-up, second follow-up, third follow-up, try to understand what are the problems. We'll talk about it in detail in the later slides. But why I'm showing you this slide, because you yourself should not get frustrated that why I'm spending so much time on a person who is not willing to quit or something like that. You try to understand that this habit is not a simple habit. It is having this physical, psychological, behavioral flow. It is not that easy for the person to quit also. So somewhere you should always be same enthusiastic to treating and passionate and helping the patient. He may take 3 to 11 attempts. That is, you don't tell this to the patient, of course, but you should always remember this and keep on seeing that why this patient is not quitting and trying to help him. Again, this is not important. Skip it. So basically, WHO has got a very good protocol for helping the patient to quit. The counseling, what I'm talking about, definitely counseling is a skill, and people have their own ways of counseling. But WHO has again tried to standardize this counseling in a way by giving some protocols. And my personal experience is that when I started practicing the tobacco de-addiction, I religiously followed each and every step of this WHO protocol, and because of that, my success rate was good, and I could gain confidence, and success rate kept on improving every time. So this is something very basic. Again, it's not very difficult, but if you stick to this, because WHO has built it with a lot of inputs and a lot of experts, so you should go through it, and of course you can develop your own methods also. So this WHO has this 5 framework which talks about ask, advise, assess, assist, and quit. We can quickly run through the details of it. So there are 3 types of patients: current users, former users, never users. Current users who are currently using it. Former, basically we consider people who have left in the near past, like 1 month. We should also consider them because, as I said, tobacco withdrawals may last for 2 to 4 weeks. So there are high chances that a person might get back into the habit. So you should also see to it that you counsel those people also in detail who have left or quit tobacco in 1 month's time if they're coming in contact with you. Of course, never users are best. You can congratulate them and tell them to stay away from it. So I'm talking about the 5 A's. The first A is ask. Now, first is what do you mean by ask? So who you are going to ask? Every patient, every time. because as I already mentioned in our organon about don't get prejudiced. So sometimes you may feel that this person who has come to me, I don't think he might be consuming tobacco. No, never do that. Every patient you have to ask. Don't get yourself prejudiced, and you might skip a patient if you're not asking. So make it a part of your routine history taking. That habits has to be part of it. So every patient you have to ask, every time you have to ask, what you're going to ask, of course, the simple questions about the patterns and about the tobacco addiction. How long have you been consuming this tobacco and all? Why this is important? Again, this will give you, show you, finding out the reasons why he started and what is his psychological association with this tobacco product. That will be clear once you get into this small questions about the patterns and everything. How are you going to ask? Definitely in a friendly way. Of course, homeopathic doctors are the best in history taking, and we know how to, make the person comfortable in history taking. Because if the person will not reveal it to you, of course, again you will lose a patient. When are you going to ask is, of course, when the patient is comfortable. Of course, these are all medical ethics, but yeah, this is again very important. Where are you going to ask? Of course, in a healthcare setup. I would try to mention one point over here that it has research has shown that when this tobacco de-addiction intervention is being provided to a patient in a healthcare setup by a healthcare provider, the chances of him into quitting increases 4 times. So this where you are is very important. You cannot go on the road and if you find someone smoking and you can go and tell him that counseling. But it makes a very good impact when this is happening in your healthcare setup by a healthcare provider. So this where is also very important. First day, as I said, is asking every patient, asking about a tobacco consumption. Second is advice. Once you come to know that a person is into tobacco habit, it's like immediately what you should advise him. And how should this advising about, of course, quitting the tobacco product, but how this advice should be very clear and strong. Because today the current scenario, what happens is most of the doctors tell the person to quit tobacco, but they don't tell them how to quit. I mean, they just tell that it is hampering your body and you should quit, but they don't have that whatever body language or whatever to tell them in a clear and strong way. And because this message should be very clear to the patient that this is something that they have to do it, otherwise it is going to cost them their life. So that is how your advice should be very strong and very clear. And it should be personalized also. Personalized means if the person is having diabetes, you can correlate how the tobacco is affecting your diabetes or whatever present complaint they have come to you. You can try to correlate that with tobacco and tell them how this is affecting your health and this particular current complaint of yours also. So that is your personalized kind of advice. So first you ask the patient, secondly you advise the patient. Now every patient has different motivation levels or different mindsets that we are already aware of. But then what you should do, you should understand what is the motivation level or you should judge the patient. So you should assess. So you should assess that is the person interested in quitting? Yes. Then if he's interested, is he confident that he can quit? So that is the two levels which you have to check. And if he's not interested or he is not confident, then we should do a separate strategy. If the patient is interested and is confident, you can directly take him to and give him a game plan. Okay, you are interested and you are confident, then I will tell you how to do it. But if you're not interested and if you are not, but you are interested but not confident, then there is a different plan. See, this strategies have to be different because, as I said, every patient is different. You cannot have a universal same strategy because every person has a different mindset, even when it comes to de-addiction. So for the people, assess is basically assessing the motivation level. So first is ask, second is advise, and third is assess. So once you come to know that patient is willing to quit and confident to quit, you can move to this fourth A, that is assist. What you assist, as I said, assist him with the game plan. What would be the plan to quit? So what are these plans? Action plan 1, action plan 2. I will explain very quickly. Like you can give him a plan like again a strategy like STAR. This is the STAR acronym. Again, very simple to remember. Once he says, yeah, I want to quit and I am confident to quit, you just tell me how to quit. You can tell them, okay, you remember these things like STAR. set a quit date. It should not go beyond 2 weeks because there are high chances that then they don't do it. Key is tell your family members and co-workers. Why this is important? Because as you saw, the withdrawal symptoms were like irritability, anger, and also if the family members are not aware, again, if the husband quits and goes back and gets angry on the wife will again shout on the husband, and then husband may land up taking another cigarette. So your family should be very supportive. Your colleagues, if they are into the habit, they won't smoke in front of you. So all these things matter. So set a quit date. Second is tell your family members and your co-workers about your decision. Third is anticipate challenges. STA. A stands for anticipate challenges. Now what happens is, as I said, when you don't get nicotine, when you're quit, if you're quit, you won't smoke. If you don't smoke, your brain won't get nicotine, and the body will throw some withdrawals. So you should ask the person that if you don't get tobacco or you don't get your tobacco product, what are the difficulties you face? So he will tell you, okay, I get headache or I get irritable or I get whatever things. You should prepare them in advance to this. You should tell them this could be the strategy for this particular thing. If they are prepared, then once they face it, they can do it in a better way. So this is basically anticipating what could be the problems and help overcoming it. And R is remove all the tobacco products. Why this is important? Again, removing all the products from your surrounding, because this would be acting like triggers. If you have a cigarette in your house and you're decided to quit, definitely the cigarette in the house is going to be a big trigger. So remove the cigarettes in your house, car, offices, and all, so that it won't trigger you. So this star again is a very simple thing. As I said, tobacco de-addiction is no rocket science, but these simple things make a bigger impact when you actually tell to the patients. So you can easily remember this STAR strategy, STAR. Another strategy is like 3Ds, like danger situation. This is again nothing but anticipating challenges. Developing coping skills. Now, developing coping skill is certain things like anger management, count 1 to 100, or there is something called as 4Ds. Once you see this urge of tobacco of any form, once you don't get tobacco product, it is strong for first 3 to 5 minutes and it disappears within 20 minutes. So first 3 to 5 minutes, if you tell the patient about different coping skills like 4Ds, like first D is drink water, second is deep breathing, third is delay as much as possible and do something else. So this simple coping skills also help the patient to overcome the urge. And third is discuss and provide basic information. As I said, you can tell the patient about the good things about quitting, how it is affecting their body, their families, their whatever economically and all. So discuss and provide basic information about tobacco. So this could be the second action plan. These are different action plans. I'm not going into details of it, but the STAR strategy and coping mechanisms are very important. So as I said, first was ask, second was advise, third was assess, then it was assessed, and then comes is arrange. What do you mean by arrange? As I said, in addiction of any treatment of any addiction, follow-up is important. So arranging for follow-up is very important. No matter what best treatment you give in the first session, the follow-up is what is going to make a difference, because that is the time when they face withdrawals. And if they are not able to overcome withdrawals, then definitely what will happen is the relapse and they will start consuming the product again. The follow-up should be initially very frequently, because as you saw in the withdrawals are more frequent in the first 4 weeks. So in the first 4 weeks, you can have a follow-up every week. Then you can extend those follow-up like every 15 days or 1 month also. Normally follow-up should be continued for 6 months at least to designate a person as tobacco free. Ideally, you should do a 6 months follow-up. So this arrange is nothing but arranging for your follow-ups. So first was ask, advise, assess, assist, and arrange. Again, as I said, these are simple steps. These are WHO protocol of 5A. You should follow this 5A's protocols, and definitely this is going to benefit the patient. So as I said, there was something where a patient is not willing to quit or not willing to quit but not confident. There is something strategy called as 5R strategy. Again, this is not a rocket science. Again, very simple thing. This 5R consists of relevance of quitting, risk of tobacco use, rewards of quitting, roadblocks, why the person is feeling that he is not confident about quitting, and again do the repeat assessment and then provide the entire assist the game plan strategy to them. But again, this people would require little more aggressive treatment or aggressive counseling or spending little more time with them. Of course, for the patient who is not willing to quit, you cannot do much about it, but you can still tell them of the relevance of quitting and risk and rewards. You can tell them about how it is affecting your body scientifically and how it is going to benefit your body, because you can at least start making them think, and you should tell them, okay, at any point you want to quit, we can provide you help. So the person will at least start thinking, and whenever he thinks of quitting, he will definitely come back to you. There is no point in the for you to give him a game plan because he's not willing to quit. If the person is not willing to quit, how can you give him a game plan and strategy to quit? But believe me, in the personal practice, I have not seen any patient who is not willing to quit, or even if he's not willing to quit, he won't tell a doctor that I don't want to quit. He would at least give that respect to a doctor, and he would understand from you what would be the complications and how he can quit. He will understand the strategy also. So there could be some challenging cases, like people come up with different things in the practice. Like I have been smoking for many years without any health problems. Plus my grandfather used to smoke 2 packs a day and lived for 90 years. So how does quitting matters? These are some challenging cases which you will face when you start practicing, and you have to come up with your answers. Definitely, I have answers for all this thing. And believe me, if you can answer this question, you have almost, you have already treated 50% to 80% of the person, because most of the thing what person has is a lot of misconceptions and a lot of unwillingness, because he's so much of what you can say cultural and so much of strong belief in certain wrong beliefs what he has. You should always clear that. That is why psychological addiction is a bigger part in tobacco de-addiction. So psychological addiction has to be broken by understanding what are his challenges or what are his beliefs about it, and break those beliefs. If I'm going to die 10 years earlier, that's okay. I'm going to die anyway. I might as well have a pleasure of smoking and die. I only chew tobacco since I'm not emitting smoke. I'm not really harming my family or others. I do not want to quit, but I would like to reduce tobacco use. You can't find a single thing in your patient that you can use to motivate him or to change, or she seems to have no motivation. Again, believe me, this is not possible. You can definitely find some of the motivation point in the person, and you can motivate him to quit. What if nothing works? Your patient just doesn't seem to care, and you feel that you have reached a wall. So I don't have that much time that I can, have an interactive session with you to covering all these challenges. But if you have any queries, I'll provide my number, and I have all the answers to all these challenging cases, and we can definitely discuss it on a personal level. As I said, withdrawal symptoms you should be very aware of, because that is the way you're going to select your medicine, your homeopathic remedies. Nicotine therapy, I would like to just tell before I get into homeopathic management. Nicotine replacement therapy is not an allopathic treatment or not any treatment. It's a generalized treatment. It is the basic thing, like as I said, when your person smokes, he smokes tobacco. He smokes so many chemicals, like 4,000 to 7,000. Out of his 200 are poisonous and whatever carcinogenic chemicals. But the main culprit is nicotine. Now the brain doesn't. For a brain, it doesn't matter from where this nicotine is coming. Means if a doctor tells the person to stop smoking because he's suffering from anything, the doctor advises stop smoking, he will go out and have another tobacco product, because the brain wants nicotine. So they have used the same concept over here. What they do is, brain has no concern from where this nicotine is coming. So instead of smoking, they put a nicotine chewing gum in the mouth, or they put a nicotine patch. Now what they have done is they have replaced the nicotine from a tobacco into a crude form, where the brain gets a nicotine, dopamine is released, and brain gets nicotine cut dose, and brain can function properly. They don't get into any withdrawals. So this is called as nicotine replacement therapy, replacing the nicotine from the tobacco into crude form, using different there's products like chewing gums and patches and inhalers and everything, but try to understand the logic behind it. That is why it is called as nicotine replacement therapy. But having said that, this is not the only treatment, because this has to be supported by counseling, and the nicotine dose or the has to be tapered down. Because tomorrow, if he doesn't get a nicotine chewing gum, brain will demand nicotine and he will start to smoke again. So it has to be supported by other counseling, and the nicotine dose has to be tapered. So there are nicotine products available, as I said, chewing gum and patches, and they are available in different potencies. And the selection of potencies and all is there depending upon the consumption. And if the person is physically dependent, then the nicotine replacement has a bigger role to play. But otherwise, if he just behavioral addiction is there, then nicotine replacement doesn't matter much, because he is not nicotine dependent till that stage. So just try to understand the logic behind it. And these are OTC product. The patient can buy it directly. Unfortunately, that's another mistake, because they need to be taken in the proper dosages and proper methods, and it has to be tapered. Unfortunately, in India, it's a OTC, over-the-counter product, and most of the time it is wrongly taken and it is misused. But try to understand the logic behind this nicotine replacement therapy, which comes in the form of nicotine patches, gums, sprays, inhalers, and lozenges. So what should be there in your first session? Like, assess the current readiness and ability to quit, inform the client about a treatment program, assess the current tobacco use of the behavior, assess the past quit attempts. Why past quit attempts are important? That shows the willingness to quit, and what are the different problems he faced, so you can prepare him for that, facing that problem, anticipating challenges. Explain how tobacco dependence develops and assess nicotine dependence. Inform the client about withdrawal symptoms. Set a quit date. From the commitment from the patient. You can ask the patient to call a family member and make a commitment that he is decided to quit. Discuss preparations and provide the summary. Advise on challenge the changing routine, because introduce, if you are removing something from his life, you have to introduce something like introduce exercise and other alternatives could benefit in the routine. Discuss how to address the issues of the patient's smoking contact, and how the patient can change the support during the quit attempt. This quit buddy concept is again very important. If they have a friend who can support him is important. Address any potential high risk situation and in the coming week. That I said, in the initial week, the follow-up should be very aggressive. Confirm the importance of abrupt cessation. This is called as something as cold turkey. I mean, immediately stopping it. Believe me, there is no harm in doing cold turkey also. Some people just do it, and some people may not be able to do it. So it's just about person to person. But abruptly stopping is not a bad decision or a wrong way. Prompt a commitment from the patient, discuss and plan and provide a summary. So what should be the follow-up thing? A follow-up is, as I said, again, very important. So what you can do in follow-up is check on the patient's progress, discuss any withdrawal symptoms, what was it, and accordingly treat that. Discuss any difficulty situations, experience, and methods of coping, which you can guide them with. Address any potential high-risk situations. In the coming week, like 1 week is over, but in next week, if they are having any, going to go out of town, or going to have a different party in the house or anything, so you should always help them in coping with that. Address any potential high-risk situations coming up. Confirm the importance of not a puff or a packet rule. See, this is very important, because once a person has quit, there is something called as slips which might happen. Means this person is smoking 10 cigarettes a day and he quits completely, but then after 10 days, he has a single cigarette. So the single cigarette is not a complete relapse, and he then again stops that with a single and then continues his whatever abstinence, or he doesn't smoke after that. But after 10 days, he had spoken 1 cigarette and again continued with no cigarette. But at one cigarette was a slip. Now this slip is again a very tricky thing because this slips has high chances to get into a complete relapse. So no puff, not a single puff rule is very important. Again, provide a summary of whatever, and then again have a follow-up. So this was about the WHO protocol and basic about tobacco addiction. But how can we be benefiting or supporting this entire thing once you understood this tobacco addiction? One more thing I missed over here is another thing about any addiction, or it's a general psychological theory of stages of mind. The person who comes to you with a tobacco addiction can either be of all these three kind of addictions, like physical, psychological, behavioral, that is about specific to tobacco. But there is something specific to mind also, that there are stages of mind. So the stages of mind is a general psychology theory where it is called as pre-contemplation stage, contemplation, preparation, action, and relapse or maintenance. Just to give an example, apart from addiction, like a fat person or an obese person. So the fat person, no matter you tell him that you are fat, if the fat person feels that I am not fat or I am not obese, he is not going to do anything about it. So that is called as pre-contemplation stage, where the fat person doesn't feel that he is fat. Similarly, a smoker doesn't feel that this smoking is affecting him or he should quit or he should do anything about it. He's comfortable or he's okay with this smoking thing. So that is called as pre-contemplation stage, where the smoker has not even thought about it, where the fat person has not even thought about it. Now, what is contemplation? Where the fat person starts thinking, if everyone is saying I'm fat, or if the doctor is also saying fat and I'm going to suffer with certain problems, I should start doing something about it. He's not done anything, but yet he starts thinking. That is the contemplation stage. Similarly, the smoker starts feeling that whatever he's doing is something problematic and he should do something about it. So this is a contemplation stage. Then comes the preparation stage. What did in preparation stage, the fat person pays the gym or whatever payment it is. He has not started going to the gym, but he does the payment in the gym. That is the preparation stage. And what the smoker does, he gives you a quit date. Though he's not stopped it, but he's giving you quit date. That is the preparation stage. Then comes the action stage, where the fat person starts going to the gym, and the smoker quits completely. That is the action stage. So there is a thin line between preparation and action, but definitely there is a difference. After the action stage, what will happen is the fat person will continue going to the gym, or he may stop going to the gym. So there will be a maintenance or relapse. Similar to a smoker, he will stop completely or again start continue for some days and again start smoking. So why I'm telling you the stages of mind? Because when a person who comes to you, he might be any of the stages. It's not necessary that a person who comes to you, he is in a stage where he has already preparation to quit. He might be in a stage where he's in a pre-contemplation stage. He might be a stage where he has already quit, but he is finding difficult to maintain it. So you should be very clear about what stage of mind is person. Again, it may sound whatever little confusing and all because you have not thought of this before, but it is very simple. When you start practicing and noting it down, it is very simple, and these things will actually help you in designing your strategy. Once you are clear with this, your strategy will be more impactful. That is why I'm making this small whatever inputs I can give, because this has helped me in my personal practice in counseling the patient and providing them with proper strategies. As I said, most of the tobacco withdrawals are mind related. So we have a lot of homeopathic remedies which we can actually have proven to be beneficial into it. Believe me, all our doctors who are attending have a great what you can say knowledge about the homeopathic remedies. It can be more than me also, because my major focus is addiction and tobacco addiction. My focus also on the remedies which have been beneficial for tobacco addiction. You can definitely have your own constitutional medicine and other experiences with mother teachers also. But I'm just going to briefly touch the remedies which I have mentioned about it in different literatures, and I have practiced. In my personal practice, I've been using it. But I don't stick to only this. As I said, understanding the tobacco addiction and understanding the basics of tobacco is important, because that is what is going to build up your entire case, and that is going to help you in then selecting your remedy and helping the patient. Most of the time it may happen that, as I said, it could be the obstacle to cure, because once a person has come to you with certain thing and you have designed a constitutional medicine for him, but the smoking is an obstacle. So then again, it becomes important that you should see to it the person overcomes this tobacco addiction habit. So Plantago is one medicine is specified for nicotinamide. Natural variety has been found to create an aversion to tobacco. When patient complaints are depression, sleeplessness, insomnia is another withdrawal which most of the patients do suffer. But I have patients who smoke before going to sleep. They don't get sleep without smoking. But majority of them have insomnia or sleeplessness, constipation, as I said, eye pain, bad temper. So this Plantago has found to be useful in these cases. Tobacco, though tobacco itself is tobacco, but it has to be again used very wisely. Those who are having these issues like nausea, vomiting, motion sickness, indigestion, hypertension, confusion, lack of concentration are given tobacco, as it assists in the elimination of toxin carried by tobacco. It has significant effect on tobacco craving. Ignatia, it is a medicine often used for anxiety correlated with tobacco craving, and it is frequently allied with excitability and marked as sensory hypersensitivity. But again, as I said, this has to be correlated with your entire constitution and other general observations from your detailed case taking. Carcinogenism is there, nosode is there, your calmadium is there, your carboanimalus is there, Staphysagrea is there, Ignatia is there, Nux vomica is there, sulfur is there. I'm not going into details of this because this could be a lecture in itself by discussing your cases. But what my focus and what my what take-home message for you is, first try to understand tobacco addiction. First try to understand what should be your strategy and how you are going to take the case of the person and how you are going to individualize each tobacco addictive patient also. Once you have done that, your homeopathic history taking is good enough to take care of your withdrawals, because every person is going to show you with different withdrawals. So you cannot predict the withdrawals. But at the same time, with the regular and good follow-up, you can then, depending upon what are the constitutional medicine, what could be the complementary medicine or what could complement that medicine, and the current withdrawal which is showing can definitely be given. And over a period of time, you will develop that knack of what is working and what is not working in average patients. That's from my side, but I would have some question answer sessions if anyone has doubts about it. This is my number. Feel free to contact me if you have any queries in future dealing with your patients, but don't refer patient to me. I want more and more of you to see patients and help patients. If required, I will definitely support you in whatever way I can. But I want you to start practicing, because each patient is going to teach you and is going to increase your confidence. And believe me, this is such a noble cause that I have been fortunately in this field, and I've been able to help so many families, because I have been working with the best cancer doctors and best cancer hospitals in the city, and the condition is very bad and the situation is very bad, and people landing up into different cancers and all. We can actually help a lot of people before they land up into a lot of major illnesses.